I'm Megan Riley, Senior Product Manager at a fintech firm in Chicago. I handle 3 cross-functional teams, balance 6 roadmaps, and probably answer more Slack messages per day than I blink. My calendar lives in 15-minute increments, and if I'm being honest, I've become pretty good at keeping things efficient, including relationships. It was my birthday on a Thursday, sandwiched between 2 investor meetings and a sprint review. I didn't tell anyone, not because I was hiding it, just because it didn't seem relevant. But around 8:30 a.m., I found a small, perfectly wrapped box on my desk with a neat white envelope taped on top. Inside the card in handwriting that was surprisingly careful, it read, "Happy birthday, Megan. Hope this means something to you someday." From Leo. Leo was our summer intern. Smart kid, quiet, very polite, but the kind of polite that makes you unsure if he's scared of you or just raised exceptionally well. I remembered him vaguely mentioning a background in design thinking during orientation, and that he brought his own tea thermos to every meeting. That's about it. I didn't open the box right away. I barely glanced at it before pushing it aside between my laptop and a half-eaten protein bar. It sat there all morning while I powered through KPIs and roadmap planning. Later that afternoon, I had a one-on-one with Marcus, our CFO, and it hit me that maybe a small gesture could grease the wheels. So without really thinking, I grabbed the box and said, "Here, thought you might appreciate this. Looks fancy. Birthday gift. No idea what's inside." He raised an eyebrow, but took it with a smile. And I walked out of that meeting feeling kind of proud of myself. Smart move, right? Build goodwill, clear my desk of clutter, kill 2 birds. I didn't know then that that little unopened box was about to cost me a whole lot more than I ever expected. The next morning, I bumped into Leo near the kitchen, right by the cold brew dispenser. I smiled a little awkward, holding my coffee like a peace offering. I thanked him again for the gift and mentioned that Marcus had loved it. He stared at me for a second longer than felt comfortable, then said, "It's fine." Just that. Flat, cold. Then he turned and walked out without waiting for a response. I stood there for a beat, unsure if I had imagined the iciness in his tone. That should have been the end of it. Interns don't usually have the luxury of brooding silence. But over the next few days, something shifted. Leo, who had always taken quiet notes during meetings, started responding to every task with crisp precision, like someone preparing documentation for an audit. There was no warmth, no small talk, just sharp, efficient delivery. I got emails from him at 2:14 a.m., complete with timestamps and bullet points. He stopped asking questions, stopped seeking feedback. He followed instructions to the letter, but something about it felt off, like he was observing rather than participating. I tried to brush it off. Maybe he was just being professional. Maybe I was reading too much into it. But then came the hallway conversations. Whenever I entered a room, Leo would glance at me once expressionless, then redirect his focus to whoever else was speaking. Like I wasn't there. Or worse, like I wasn't relevant. Even his email tone changed. Where he once wrote, "Hey Megan, quick question," he now sends messages that read, "FYI metrics compiled. Let me know if further clarification is required." It wasn't rude. It was sanitized. And it made my skin crawl in a way I couldn't quite explain. I caught myself hesitating before speaking in meetings when he was present. I felt the way you do when someone's watching you with a mirror instead of eyes, reflecting every move but giving nothing back. One morning, I asked him if everything was okay. He looked up from his laptop and said, "Of course, why wouldn't it be?" Then went right back to typing. I didn't know what I expected. An apology maybe, or some kind of release valve. Instead, I felt the tension in the air hardening, turning invisible and permanent, like fog that doesn't lift. Whatever had shifted wasn't going to shift back. I didn't know it then, but I'd just given the wrong person the perfect reason to make me regret it. I arrived at the office 2 hours early that day, adrenaline buzzing through my chest. We had a presentation scheduled, with a potential partner who could triple our user base if we landed them. I had spent the entire weekend fine-tuning every slide, every transition, every last bullet point. I opened my laptop, connected it to the conference room screen, and went looking for the deck. It wasn't there. I checked the downloads folder. Nothing. I clicked through my desktop cloud sync and backup drive. Still nothing. My fingers moved faster, bordering on panic now. The file was gone. My stomach tightened as if I'd swallowed something sharp. I had saved it just last night, right before bed. I remembered the confirmation pop-up. I remembered the file name. Now it had simply vanished. I tried breathing slowly, telling myself it had to be some glitch. I reopened the browser signed into the shared drive, but there was no version from the weekend, just an outdated draft from last Thursday. I was still clicking aimlessly when the door opened, and Leo stepped in holding a USB drive in one hand and a to-go cup in the other. He looked surprised to see me already there, then nodded casually. He asked if I was okay. I said the file had disappeared, trying to sound calm and professional, but my voice cracked halfway through the sentence. He said he might have a copy, that he'd saved the deck to review a few details and thought it'd be smart to keep a backup. My heart dropped and fluttered all at once. I didn't know whether to be grateful or suspicious. He handed me the drive. I plugged it in. The file opened instantly. Complete, clean, exactly as I remembered. I thanked him. He smiled, said something about teamwork, then left. I stood alone, staring at the screen, pretending to review my slides, but all I could think was, how did he know I'd lose it? Or worse, how did he have it before I did? Something didn't feel right. Not yet enough to accuse, but enough to make me check the locks twice before I left that night. The presentation went better than I'd dared hope. The room was engaged, the questions were sharp but fair, and I walked out feeling like I had pulled off a small miracle. Leo had even nodded along from the back, his face unreadable, but present, like a silent endorsement. But then, during coffee with one of the partner reps, a strange comment slid in. He said he appreciated how our team had already floated an alternative pricing model last week, and that Leo had done a great job walking him through it over the phone. I blinked. I hadn't authorized any call. I hadn't approved any pricing alternatives. I hadn't even known they were speaking. I played it cool, smiled, said we'd circle back on those numbers, then excused myself to the restroom, where I stood frozen, replaying every step of the past week. I had no memory of that delegation. None. Back at my desk, I scrolled through my inbox and calendar. Nothing. No meeting invite, no summary, no note. I confronted Leo later that afternoon, keeping my voice steady. He looked genuinely puzzled. Said I'd asked him to handle it, even showed me an email sent from my account thanking him for taking the lead on the preliminary discussion. The email thread looked real. Time-stamped, formatted just like mine. I couldn't remember writing it, but it was from me. I stared at the screen, trying to reconcile what I knew with what I saw. My name, my signature, my tone. It felt like staring at a photo of yourself in a place you're certain you've never been. He watched me closely, like someone waiting to see which version of the truth I would accept. I said nothing, just nodded and walked away. But my thoughts were racing. Either I had lost time or someone had rewritten it for me. And if that was true, then this wasn't just about a gift anymore. This was about control. And I was starting to realize I'd already lost more of it than I knew. It started with a Slack message from Rachel in legal. Just a quick ping that said she needed to talk, nothing urgent, but she sounded off. We met in one of the small huddle rooms, and she asked if I'd seen the clip going around internal threads. I hadn't. She pulled it up on her phone. The video showed me sitting in a conference room talking about one of our clients in a tone that was borderline mocking. I was smiling casually, tearing into their leadership style and joking about how gullible they were during negotiations. I watched my own face say words I was sure I'd never spoken. I felt the blood drain from my arms. It wasn't just the content. It was how real it looked. My voice, my cadence, even the way I tilted my head when I made a point. But I had no memory of this meeting. None. And I don't forget conversations like that. Not ever. I told Rachel it had to be a mistake, maybe edited, taken out of context. She didn't push back, just nodded slowly. Said she was giving me a heads up before it reached anyone higher. Then she left me alone in the room with the video still playing. I watched it again, hoping the second time would trigger some memory or flaw in the footage. But there was nothing. It was perfect. And for the first time I wondered if someone had made it that way on purpose. I walked back to my desk in a haze, every sound too loud, every movement suddenly suspicious. It wasn't just that I might be misunderstood, it was that someone had built a version of me I couldn't control, and it was starting to spread. The message came through LinkedIn late one night. I almost ignored it, assuming it was just another recruiter, until I saw the subject line about Leo. The sender was someone named Kara Wynn, and she mentioned they'd worked together at his previous internship. Her note was short but unsettling. She said she didn't want to assume anything, but that what I might be experiencing wasn't unique. Then she asked if my team had recently started questioning my decisions, if files had gone missing, or meetings seemed to shift without explanation. My chest tightened as I read. I replied right away. We agreed to a quick call. She didn't waste time with small talk. Instead, she told me about her old boss, a guy named Thomas, who ran a mid-sized creative agency. Apparently, Leo had worked directly under him during his final semester. Thomas had been well-liked, solid reputation, and sharp strategist. Then things started going wrong. Client notes disappeared. Budget errors popped up in presentations. Emails that Thomas swore he never sent began leaking across departments. And then a video surfaced of Thomas speaking in a boardroom, slamming a major partner in the most unprofessional way. Kara said it looked real too real, but she had been in that meeting. Those words were never spoken. Thomas tried to defend himself, but by then the damage was done. Clients backed off. His board lost confidence. 6 weeks later, he resigned. Leo was promoted to his role temporarily before the company downsized. Kara said no one ever connected the dots officially, but she had always felt something was off. As she spoke, everything in me stilled. The disappearing files, the video, the perfectly timed mistakes. This wasn't about a bottle or a bruised ego anymore. It was a playbook. And I had just become the next chapter. The quarterly review was already tense. Everyone in leadership was there. Our CEO, department heads, board observers, and a few big investors sat around the long conference table waiting for results. I had my numbers ready. My projections were solid. But then Leo asked for a moment before my presentation began. He said he had a file to share, something that would provide additional context on recent strategy execution. No one objected. The lights dimmed slightly. Leo plugged in a drive and played the video without looking at me once. On screen, it was me. In a meeting room, I recognized talking about our new approach to client segmentation. I watched myself outline ideas I hadn't created, credit strategies I hadn't led. Every sentence sounded confident, deliberate. I even named the framework after myself. It was all wrong. I'd never said those things. But there I was, claiming full ownership of initiatives I knew came from other team members, from Leo, from data science, from a brainstorming session I hadn't even attended. But the people watching didn't know that. They just saw my face, my voice presenting with authority. I couldn't speak. My mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Someone cleared their throat. My boss leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, eyes on me, but face unreadable. When the video ended, the room was painfully quiet. Leo unplugged the drive and sat down like nothing had happened. I stood there frozen. Any words I could offer would sound like excuses. The worst part wasn't the shame. It was the doubt creeping in around the edges. What if someone believed it? What if everyone did? In 5 minutes, my credibility, my entire identity at this company had started to unravel. I was no longer the one holding the clicker. I was the slide they'd remember, the one where everything went wrong. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid, but because I finally had what I needed. I'd been working quietly with IT security for weeks, gathering every log, every access trace, every server backup that could connect the dots. And now those dots formed a perfect outline. The next morning, I sent one calendar invite. Subject line, clarification meeting. Attendees Leo, our CEO, head of IT and corporate counsel. It was scheduled for 900 a.m. sharp. When everyone arrived, I didn't waste time. I started with the access logs, screenshots showing someone using my login from an IP address across the city at the exact time I was presenting live. Then I showed footage from the data center, Leo entering the restricted area with an external drive 3 weeks before the first deepfake appeared. His badge swiped the server access, all time-stamped. The IT head confirmed the installation of unauthorized software on our systems. Not just editing tools. Advanced generative video tech. Leo sat stiff, trying to stay composed, but his palms were damp against the conference table. He tried to speak. I didn't let him. I clicked again. This time, a camera recording from his workstation. The audio captured snippets of video edits, voice splicing, and my face being rebuilt in a program window. The room fell silent. My boss leaned forward and asked if there was any doubt about authorship. It shook its head. None. Our CEO looked at Leo, calm but ice cold. He asked if Leo had anything to say. Leo stared at the table, then he looked at me. But this time I didn't look away. HR was called. His badge was disabled before he even stood up. As the door closed behind him, no one said a word. I sat back, breathing fully for the first time in weeks. Not because I'd won, but because the truth finally had a voice louder than the lies. It wasn't until weeks later that I learned what had been inside the box. One of Leo's former professors reached out after reading about the investigation. She said Leo had once built a working prototype of a biometric encryption device, a project he had developed with his father before he passed away. The device had been tiny, elegant, and completely custom, meant to store secure identity data in physical form, a blend of tech and legacy. The professor said Leo spoke of it with pride, like it was more than just hardware, like it meant something. He told her he wanted to give it to someone he respected, someone he believed in. When she described the packaging, I knew instantly. It was the box I never opened, the one I gave away without a second thought. I sat alone in my office, remembering the weight of it in my hands, how I had treated it like decoration, a tool for office politics, not as a gesture, not as trust. By then, the box had long disappeared. I never saw the device, but I kept the envelope. It's tucked inside my desk drawer now. The handwriting is still clean. Hope this means something to you someday. And it does. Not because of what was inside, but because of what I failed to see. I learned that neglect doesn't always look cruel. Sometimes it wears a smile and tells itself it's being efficient. But carelessness, when aimed at the wrong person, can become a trigger for something far more damaging. I keep a new box on my shelf now, empty, no ribbon, no card, just a reminder. That trust, once discarded, doesn't always come back in the shape you expect, and that sometimes the cost of not paying attention isn't just a mistake, it's a reckoning.